What's up, everybody? We are live from my home office, and the this is a new thing that I'm doing. The press release for the U.S. Attorney's Office said their press conference would start promptly at 9 a.m. So I said to myself, okay, that means definitely it's not going to start at 9 a.m. They never start on time. That's one thing I've learned from doing this all these years. But I've got it up on my screen here. They're doing this in person in the U.S. Attorney's Office conference room in Los Angeles, but they're also broadcasting it on WebNX. So I've been up there for their press conferences before. I went up there for a Michael Avenatti press conference, but being able to watch from home is nice. So I've got it on the other browser. Oh, they're doing it. I'll share it in a second. They're gonna start. They are announcing a cybersecurity action. They really didn't give much information beyond that. Um, One thing is to be noted in this, the U.S. attorney, I think it's fair to still call him new, Martin Estrada, has press conferences like at least 3 times a week. I mean, the guy, his entire schedule is just press conferences. So, I mean, any chance he can get to hold a press conference, he appears to absolutely jump at it and relish it. So, uh, it'll be interesting to see what indictment they announce here. But I'm not trying to downplay the significance of what they're going to announce, but it's just a fact that he holds press conferences all the time. But let me see, pull up the news release here while we're waiting. It says Justice Department and FBI officials will hold a press conference tomorrow. They sent this out yesterday to announce a major action targeting a significant cybersecurity threat. So I said, "Oh, what better use of my YouTube live stream than to get this press conference on there for everybody to watch?" Because I think LA kind of has a obviously there's the East Coast bias in the news, but there's just so much going on the DC circuit, the Southern District of New York, that I think LA feels a little left out sometimes at the national coverage. But I'll try to get them some sunshine on this press conference that they're having here. But of course, promptly at 9 a.m. means 9:07, 10 a.m. It doesn't look like the picture is going to be very good when I share this here. That's happened before on when I've tuned in. I've been not impressed with the camera quality of their live stream, but it's better than nothing. And the way these things work, especially if there's an indictment. I mean, the big news and the big thing to do if you're going to write an article on this is to actually get the indictment and read through it that way, and we'll be able to do that as soon as we know the names of who's been announced, or they'll probably send something out if it's unsealed or the indictment's unsealed or something. But we're just kind of waiting on that here. There's a few other things going on. The sentencing, it's been a banner week for the U.S. Attorney's Office. They had the sentencing yesterday from Mark Ridley-Thomas that I was planning on getting into after the press conference because, it could just start any minute and I could be like mid-sentence or something on MRT. But as I think some people saw, I'll put the article in the chat here for the 8 people who are tuned in. I'm sure there'll just be hundreds of thousands of tuned in later on. But Mark Ridley-Thomas, he's a well-known politician in Los Angeles, was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison yesterday for a bribery scheme involving University of Southern California dean. I covered the trial back in March, and then I covered the sentencing for the dean back in July. And she's 84. She got home detention for 18 months. Her lawyers tried to get her out of that, but it was pretty obvious at her sentencing that he was gonna get prison. Mark Ridley-Thomas was, but he asked for probation, which I was like, oh, what? I think I've covered a sentencing recently where somebody asked for probation. I can't remember. It might have been another case somewhere. I don't know, But oh yeah, she says, "Were you surprised by the 3.5 years?" And that's interesting because yeah, overall I was. And but it's funny because somebody who frankly knows more about this and knows the judges longer than I do, told me a while back, even that long ago, that he thought Fisher wasn't going to do the full 6 years. He said he thought that Dale Fisher, who, to be clear, is a woman, was going to do something more like 3 or 4 years. So he's usually right about stuff, but I still was surprised, and so are some other people. There's a comment from on Twitter. I'll try to bring it up here from Brian Gerwitz, who's a pretty well-known defense attorney. He's based in Orange County, but I know he does stuff in LA. He used to be with the federal, but he commented that he was surprised to see Dale Fisher go light on something like that. And oh, here we go. They're starting. Do we have?
Don Alway, no S at the end of Alway. Mr. Martin will coordinate Q&A. We'll do Q&A for a couple of minutes after that, and then we'll be on our merry way. We'll do a Spanish one-on-one following. You guys can all pack up and go, and we'll all be out of here by 9:30. Thank you for your patience this morning. We appreciate it. The news release is being finalized. Will be emailed out probably in the next 5 minutes. The documents associated with this case will be on a website. The link will be at the bottom of the news release. So if you want to burrow into all the nice technical issues that we will be discussing today, and in the court documents that we're providing, they'll be available very soon. 30 seconds.
That was Tom, everyone's favorite government. He's a good client. He's been with the U.S. Attorney's Office forever. Tom with an H. He's the one I mean, you got to imagine there's a lot of work for the Public Information Office, just coordinating everything. I mean, if this is, they announced one, I didn't cover it, but they had the last big press conference they had, other than the MRT sentencing, was the one about it was a joint press conference in San Diego about the 2 Navy guys who were arrested for providing secrets to China. So that was big. That got national attention from New York Times was covering that and everything. So just all the media calls that they must get from people who don't usually cover this stuff. So, but here they come. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more here.
Good morning. My name is Martin Estrada. I'm the United States Attorney based here in Los Angeles. We're here today to announce the most significant technological and financial operation ever led by the Department of Justice against a botnet. The botnet in question is one of the most notorious and pernicious botnets in the world. It's known as Quackbot. I'd like to put on the screen now the first slide of the presentation so you can see the name of this particular botnet. Quackbot has been responsible during the course of its life for numerous losses in the area of cybercrime, tens of millions of dollars in losses through ransomware payments. And by stopping Quackbot and dismantling Quackbot, we're saving consumers and victims tens of millions of dollars of losses throughout the world. In addition, we seized through this operation almost $9 million in cryptocurrency by the cyber criminals. And that money now can be returned to victims of some of these cyber attacks. This was an unprecedented operation with worldwide scope, led by the FBI and the Department of Justice, but also in collaboration with partners throughout the world, including law enforcement partners in France, the United Kingdom, Germany, the Netherlands, Romania, and Latvia. Together, we have taken down Quackbot and saved countless victims from future attacks. In order to understand the significance of this operation, it's important to have a little background in terms of how this operation takes place within the sphere of cyber criminality. As all of you know, we live in an age of enormous technological capabilities and advances. We're able to share information, we're able to communicate in ways that prior generations thought unthinkable. But with those advances have also come costs. Cybercrime. All of us have dealt with attempts to steal our information, to steal our identities, to sell us on sham investments, and to take our money. These acts are carried out by organized criminal groups acting throughout the world. And the problem of cybercrime is one that is massive. One recent study found that this year alone, cybercrime will be responsible for costs of approximately $8 trillion, trillion with a T, worldwide. Ransomware attacks are one of the most pernicious forms of cybercrime. During these attacks, organized groups hack into businesses, government entities, to steal data, shut off systems by encrypting those systems. They then demand extortionate payments in order to release the systems back to the businesses. In many cases, there are double-layered attacks where the cyber criminals first hack in and steal data, then encrypt the devices, and then demand extortionate payments in order to not release the data publicly. Victims in our region here in Los Angeles have suffered significantly from ransomware attacks. For example, just in the last year alone, cyber criminals had targeted the Los Angeles Unified School District, the second largest school district in the country. Cyber criminals have targeted the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department, one of the largest sheriff's departments in the country. And cyber criminals have targeted hospitals run by Prospect Medical Holdings, a chain which runs hospitals throughout the country. And by doing that, shut down emergency rooms and medical facilities throughout the country. The danger of these ransomware attacks goes well beyond the money. Cyber criminals have attacked and shut down power stations, hospitals, food production companies, and other essential services. Stopping cybercrime is a matter of national security. One major tool used by cyber criminal groups in these ransomware attacks is known as a botnet or robot network. And I'm placing before you on the screen an image which depicts how a botnet works. To create a botnet, a cyber criminal organization uses malicious software code, also known as malware, to infect computers belonging to innocent third parties throughout the world. You'll see on the screen before you, those innocent third parties are depicted as bot victims. The malware often is installed using emails, which contain links, or documents, which if clicked on, insert the malware. This is known as a phishing attack, phishing with a PH. Once infected, the victim computers respond to the commands of servers, which are also computers that have been infected by the malware. You'll see that at the next layer above from the victims. These servers, in turn, are controlled by an administrator, the cyber criminal organization, which controls the entire botnet network. You'll see in the depiction in front of you an image of how a botnet works, but in many cases, including Quackbot, it's even more complicated with more layers insulating the administrator. The owners of the infected computers, the bot victims and the servers, may have no idea that their computers are infected or even part of a botnet. Once enough computers are infected with this malware and become part of the botnet, it becomes a powerful tool for cyber criminals throughout the world. Quackbot is one of the most successful, persistent, and notorious botnets in the globe. Every year, Quackbot infects hundreds of thousands of computers worldwide. It was first detected in 2008 and has been repeatedly updated over the years. And in terms of the infections, just this past year alone, we determined that Quackbot had infected over 700,000 different victim computers. These computers were controlled by the Quackbot administrator using a series of servers also throughout the world. The Quackbot administrator, the cyber criminal organization, sold access to the infected computers to cyber gangs who used that access to perpetrate ransomware attacks and other cyber-enabled financial crime. I'm showing you another slide now And this depicts an example of QuackBot's control panel, which the FBI obtained as part of this operation. You'll see flags with numbers corresponding to countries where infected computers were located at the time of the screenshot. You'll see for the United States alone, at the time of the screenshot, over 130,000 victim computers infected. And that number only grew over time through the QuackBot criminal organization. Because of this, worldwide QuackBot has been things throughout the world. International cyber gangs like Black Basta, Conti, and Egregor have repeatedly leveraged QuackBot to target businesses and core infrastructure throughout the world. Nearly every sector of the economy has been impacted by QuackBot. Among the victims, a power engineering firm based in Illinois, financial services organizations based in Alabama, Kansas, and Maryland, a defense manufacturer based in Maryland, and a food distribution company based here in Southern California. I'm not naming the victims here because they've not previously been identified. But suffice to say, the list goes on in terms of the victims impacted by QuackBot. It's difficult to quantify the harm that's been caused by the QuackBot criminal organization, but the scope is massive. Just during the last 18 months, we've collected evidence that QuackBot has been responsible for approximately 40 different ransomware attacks. And just in those past 18 months, these ransomware attacks have cost businesses and government entities approximately $58 million in losses. As you can imagine, this is just for an 18-month period. And this QuackBot has been around since at least 2008. You can imagine that the losses have been many millions more throughout the life of the QuackBot. But today, all of that ends. During a trailblazing operation over the past 3 days, Justice Department prosecutors, agents with the FBI, and our international partners have taken control of and dismantled QuackBot.
Going down.
Assistant Director in charge of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Don Allway, will provide details in a few minutes. But I want to emphasize that we've used our control of QuackBot to do two important things. First, we're removing the QuackBot malware from infected computers. We're notifying victims that they've been the targets of QuackBot and informing them through service providers of what has occurred. Second, we're working with our international partners, as I mentioned, law enforcement in France, the United Kingdom, Germany, the Netherlands, Romania, Latvia, to seize servers. We've seized 52 servers in the United States and abroad. By seizing these servers, we're preventing QuackBot from resurrecting to cause further additional harm.
Going down, QuackBot.
Also, very importantly, through this operation, we've recovered from the QuackBot criminal organization over 6.5 million credentials, victim credentials. Now, these victim credentials are things such as email logins and passwords, very sensitive information that these victims may have no idea were stolen from them. We're working to notify those victims that that information has been stolen. In addition to the 6.5 million credentials that we've identified, our international partners are identifying many millions more. Finally, we struck the QuackBot operators where it hurts most, in the pocketbook. During this operation, we seized approximately $8.6 million in cryptocurrency linked to the ransomware payments. We're working on setting up a mechanism so that victims can recover funds from these ransomware attacks attributed to QuackBot. All this information regarding how victims can be notified about credentials being stolen, how they can be notified about funds and how to recover those funds will be available on our website. Please look there for details. Let me say I'm incredibly proud of the work our team has done in carrying out this unprecedented operation. This operation is going to protect our country and our economy immensely. And I want to commend the work particularly of Assistant United States Attorneys Cal Shabaki and Lauren Restrepo from my office's Cyber and Intellectual Property Crime section. I want to thank the partnership we've had with trial attorneys Jessica Peck, Ryan K.J. Dickey, and Benjamin Proctor of the Justice Department's Criminal Division's Computer Crime and Intellectual Property section. We also thank Richard Downing from that same group, Deputy Assistant Attorney General in charge of these matters. And a special word of gratitude for the truly outstanding and visionary work of the FBI's Los Angeles field office for leading this unprecedented investigation and operation. As I've said before, my office's focus is on victims and vindicating the rights of victims. This operation is all about that type of work. We'll continue to do all we can fighting cyber criminals in order to protect consumers throughout the world. Thank you. And now I'll welcome to the podium Assistant Director in charge of the FBI, Don Alway.
Thank you, Mr. Strada. My name is Don Alway, and I have the honor to lead the men and women of the FBI's Los Angeles field office. Again, you heard me reference several times our thanks for the partnership that was the key to the success in this operation. This law enforcement action, which we have termed Operation Duck Hunt, took more than just expertise in science and technology. It took ingenuity, passion, innovation, and teamwork to identify and cripple this highly structured and multi-layered botnet system that was literally feeding the global cyber criminal supply chain. I'd like to explain specifically the results of the actions taken by the Duck Hunt team starting from Friday afternoon. The team gained access to Quackbot servers around the world, which allowed us to identify infected computers that make up the botnet. As of this past June, we have identified approximately 700,000 computers infected in the past year alone, and approximately 200,000 of those computers are right here in the United States. The FBI neutralized and blocked Quackbot servers, making them inaccessible to their criminal operators. The traffic was then redirected to an FBI-controlled server, which gathered information to identify the infected computers and sent instructions on how to remove the malware. In the United States, this action was authorized by a judicially authorized search warrant. The FBI file is an uninstaller file that removes the Quackbot malware and untethers the computers from the Quackbot botnet. The FBI has partnered with numerous private sector partners, the Department of Homeland Security, and international law enforcement partners from around the world to notify the owners of the computers identified as part of the botnet during this operation. I want to note that the search warrant applies only to the collection of information to identify the infected computers and the uninstallation of the Quackbot malware. The warrant does not authorize other access to the infected computers. We're providing you with a redacted copy of that search warrant. As of today, the law enforcement operation has led to the removal of thousands of malware copies of Quackbot from infected computers. And in effect, we have made the botnet inaccessible to their operators and owners. As we have removed the Quackbot malware from the network of infected computers, Quackbot has ceased to operate. As Mr. Estrada said, Quackbot sold access to its network of compromised computers to criminal affiliates, who in turn further victimized individuals with ransomware and data theft. These actions the team recently took starting Friday eliminated the threat posed by Quackbot. Over the past 18 months, the Duck Hunt team worked to identify hundreds of thousands of victims around the world in order to put an end to what has been described as one of the most devastating cyber criminal tools in history.
Well, it's like,
we believe this disruption will significantly reduce ransomware attacks.
And if you just destroy it, you didn't catch
data breaches,
aren't they just
and global fraud.
Another one and keep doing
in addition to the cryptocurrency seized, we believe that this will effectively put the Quackbot criminal groups out of business.
Okay.
This subject matter is complex, and many may find is complicated or think that it won't affect them. It can affect you and already has to many of us around the United States. So we want to emphasize practicing good cyber hygiene. A few of those tips may be
Hygiene.
make yourself a difficult target.
Put these
Do
people in
so by
prison.
using multi-factor
I want the
authentication,
Quackbot CEO.
strong passwords, having backups, and keeping your systems updated. Most importantly, slow down and think before you click. If you have questions, please
Slow down.
visit fbi.gov or ic3.gov for further guidance. As the U.S. Attorney recognized the stellar prosecutive team, I also want to acknowledge
Unfortunately,
our talented
too much.
cyber task force here in Los Angeles, who continue to impress me every day. Our international partners,
Oh, God.
who worked side by side with us to mitigate this threat that is as influential and impactful in their country as it is in ours. And I'd like to thank our government partners, to include the other FBI offices referenced from our Milwaukee and New Haven field offices. This was and is a team effort. Simply stated, the Duck Hunt team's actions this weekend and ongoing will prevent untold cyber attacks at all levels for the immediate and long-term future. We see that attacks on our critical infrastructure, such as hospitals, can put lives at risk. So in my opinion, this very much is saving lives. I want to thank you for your time and attention to this important matter. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. And now we will take any questions.
Oh, thanks.
Yes, I see a hand in the back.
Watch an FBI
Yes.
press
Do we
conference.
know
for
who
this.
is behind Quackbot?
Hey,
And
thank you.
have any
Thank
arrests
you.
been made as a result?
So one thing I should emphasize, this is an ongoing investigation, so we're not going to get into any identification of any particular individuals.
Like they would be in
The investigation is ongoing. We're gathering information, and that's all I can say at this time.
And so just to clarify, to understand that the Quackbot itself is like software, the malware that is used to infect computers, and then whoever is behind that would sell that to cyber criminals. I just want to fully understand it.
Sure. So as I explained, the botnet uses malware to infect computers, uses various layers to insulate itself, but ultimately there's a command structure by the criminal organization. That command structure allows it to commit criminal acts, but also to sell itself out, to rent itself out to other cyber criminal groups. I mentioned some of the more notorious groups that have used this particular mechanism to commit cyber crimes, but that's how it's operated, and that's how it's collected and caused millions of dollars in harm.
Is that organization based in the United States or somewhere else?
I can't get into those details. I said it's an ongoing investigation, but I can't comment on that.
So this guy could be like our neighbor. Our neighbors could be behind Quackbot.
Any other questions?
No, the FBI will not protect us.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, like
Do
as
a
this was
Spanish
going on.
Q&A.
There we go.
Just a minute up here on stage. News release has gone out. There's a link at the bottom of the news release. That link may not be live, but it will be in the next couple of minutes. That has all of our documents on it.
All right, there they all go. Wonder how many people were there. TV stations always eat this shit up because, you know, if they sent that's why there were so many people at MRT. The Mark Ridley-Thomas thing yesterday is because they sent off that press release on Friday. You know, they just got to give the TV stations some notice, and especially a sentencing like that, if they know they're going to have a press conference with people on camera, they'll go and cover it. They kept it really open-ended on
How you doing?
honestly, somebody who watches a lot of press conferences, this is always my that's always my favorite part, is like the afterwards part where you see all the media like hanging out and like people conversing and stuff. But I'm not sure if there were even really any more questions, because they kind of just sent some cameramen to that, and there might not have been a lot of reporters there because they don't really know what that is even really going to be about. And like I said, I'm not really going to write anything on that. I can't imagine like the Daily Journal is going to write anything on that, or the LA Times. Well, maybe somebody will. I mean, it does seem, you know, this Quackbot thing seems interesting, but as somebody without any knowledge of, you know, cybersecurity or past stuff, I don't know the background on it. And then as you're watching this, you're kind of struggling to, exactly. As the thing's going on, you're like waiting for them to, you know, put up the pictures of the people they just arrested for the people behind Quackbot. And then you're like, wait a minute. You kind of go back to the press release and you're like, no, that's why they say this is an action. They just like dismantled this various yeah, they didn't actually arrested anyone. They just dismantled this this program or malware. But you know, to not have to be so self-congratulatory like that, but not have any kind of arrests, or like I said, it's like, so is the guy down the street the guy behind Quackbot? Who can we trust here with this Quackbot stuff? I mean, just have like no information about that whatsoever, and to be so sure that, you know, you've saved countless future victims. When I was typing the comment earlier that was just a quote from Saving Countless Victims, I actually first mistyped it as thankless victims, and I went back and corrected it. But after I did that, I kind of realized it was kind of telling. It's like, yeah, like anybody really gives a shit. But I'm sure it's some big thing in like cyber trade journals or something. But to have no arrest was kind of lackluster. As somebody who covers things like in court, it's like, okay, so that was kind of a nothing there. But you know, I figure I'll do that more often. I was gonna thinking about doing a live today on the Mark Ridley-Thomas sentencing, so I figured why not blast out that press conference, because I mean, on the one hand, you don't want to just be a mouthpiece for the U.S. Attorney's Office, but I don't know, whatever. It was interesting enough that, you know, put it online. People can see everything they want. But yeah, what else is going on today? The Mark Ridley-Thomas sentencing was yesterday, and that was the big thing that took up the whole freaking day, because you had to get up there really early and just to get a seat. And he had a lot of people who packed the courtroom, and it's just so interesting because I mean, they're so earnest, and they just know him from all the great work that he's done as a politician. And but I mean, to me, it was just kind of inevitable that he was going to get prison. But I think there were a lot of people who went in there, you know, really hoping that he'd be able to get a probation sentence, and it just didn't happen. But somebody asked earlier if I was surprised at the 3.5 years, because prosecutors asked for 6 years in prison. And yeah, overall, I was surprised at the 3.5 years, even though my friend who knows a lot more about this and like knows Judge Fisher told me that he didn't think that she was going to do the 7 years, that it was or the 6 years, that it would be more like 3 or 4. But that being said, the people who covered the trial, like another person who watched a lot of the trial with me, was shocked that she went that low. And then Brian Gerwitz, who's a criminal defense attorney in Orange County. Here, let me pull up his comments here. He commented that he was surprised to hear that she went that low, because actually that morning I had to get up to the courthouse really early, because like I said, it was either get up there really early and wait for 3 hours, or risk sitting on the floor. But here, let me pull it up here. He said I saw a court employee who just somebody who knows the judges really well, I should say, and commented that like MRT probably couldn't have drawn a worse judge for that case. Just Judge Fisher has a reputation as being very harsh and kind of sadistic. That's somebody else's word, not mine. But she's very, very smart. But I mean, some people say that she's pro-government, but that's kind of an easy way to just sum it up. Like, she's also can be harsh on the government when she thinks that they're screwing up. But everybody had always said that this was going to be a harsh sentence. And somebody, the same person who told me they didn't think she was going to do the 6 years, told me that when that motion for new trial happened, that I didn't actually go to the hearing for, but said that somebody said that there was a higher probability of Martians landing at the courthouse than Fisher actually granting MRT a new trial. So that same guy told me he thought that she would only do 3 or 4 years. But like I said, I was surprised by it, because they asked for 6 years. He's not shown remorse or acceptance of responsibility, which I thought she had a really good reasoned explanation explaining why that matters and why that's something that she takes into consideration and why it's not the same as punishing someone for taking it to trial. And when she was reading the comments, it was very similar to how Judge Walter did his sentencing, the sentencing that I watched him do of the developer and the other public corruption case that he sentenced to 6 years. And she actually quoted Judge Walter because he'd been quoted in the prosecutor's papers because he had some eloquent comments at the developer sentencing about the need for harsh sentences for public corruption. But as she's going through this and explaining her reasoning, I mean, you're just kind of the whole time she's explaining it, you still don't know what the sentence is going to be. I mean, it's not until she actually announced the months that I just had no idea what it was be. And there were some people speculating that maybe she's going to give him more than 6 years. I don't know. I've never seen her do a sentencing, so I just knew from rumors that I'd heard or kind of her reputation. But somebody else who covered the case who didn't go to the sentencing was like shocked that she went so low. And yeah, I was going to pull up Brian's comments here, but he commented on one of my tweets that he asked the details on what her actual sentencing decision was, because that's the stuff the attorneys listen to, especially in federal court, because they go by offense level and that kind of thing. But you see, he says here, what did Judge Fisher use to justify a sentence lower than what prosecutors sought? Was it the history of public service, already taken into account by the government's recommendation and not something I think she'd care much about, or a guideline calculation ruling that differed from the government's? And it's the first part that here, as I say here, she agreed with prosecutors that the offense level is 30 because of 12-point addition due to telehealth value of $530K. So, and that was the point of contention between the defense and prosecutors, was how much is the value of the bribe. And Judge Fisher agreed it was $530,000. So under the sentencing guidelines, that gives him an increased offense level. Here, I'll bring up the sentencing table here so people can see how the offense level stuff works. But it moves it from 18 to 30, which when you see here, if you go to, he's got no criminal history. Most of the stuff I cover in a federal court involves people with no criminal history because it's like white collar crime, and most people they never have any criminal history till the big one hits. But 18 is 27 to 33 months. You see here, so the dollar amount of the bribe, counting it at $530,000. I could pull up another table that would take a little bit of time, but it shows how the offense level score increases when the dollar amount increases. And if you've got a $530,000 amount, it increases at 12 points to 30. So that bumps them all the way up to the 97 month to 121 month range, which, I mean, if you just think about what a huge boost that is, it's like, yeah, 27 to 33, that's still a hell of a lot longer than I'd want to go to federal prison, but that's more of a sentence, that people can kind of understand. But 97 to 121, and in people, I'm talking about the actual defendant. I think for public corruption, people want bigger sentences than that. But, prison's especially for white collar defendants, prison's a freaking shock to the system. So, but Fisher agreed that it was up to 30, so 97 to 121. But then she also agreed to a 2-point reduction because there's a proposed amendment to the guidelines that would allow for a 2-point offense level reduction for criminal defendants with no criminal history. So, which would reduce it down to 28, which is 78 to 97 months. So she agreed to all of that. So anything she did below that is a variance. And see, prosecutors were down here too. That was their offense level that they came up with, that put them at 78 to 97 months. And they gave him a variance down to the 72. But obviously Fisher thought he deserved a greater variance. She gave him even lower, 30 months off from that. And it was the public service, but she also talked about, in general terms, the uniqueness of the case and the the situation. It wasn't just, oh, he's done a lot of good as a public servant. It was, she praised that, said it was extraordinary, and it was definitely a mitigating factor. But she also said that the case was unique enough and there were enough questions about the dollar amount and that kind of thing that it was worth looking at the case from a more general standpoint instead of like at the details. So I do think there was something with the facts of the case that also got her down to 42. But I'll go back to Brian here. He says I told him I thought he and the other attorneys would be interested in her comments about the U.S. Probation Office recommendation. Although when I got back and looked at my notes, it wasn't all that interesting. She said that she just said the probation officer was wrong, because the probation officer, and that's one thing I don't think people know about federal sentencings, is the U.S. Probation Office offers its own assessment of the whole situation. And the report is always sealed from the public, but you'll hear prosecutors in the defense cite it in their own papers or discuss it in the courtroom. And the report gets into like all the gritty of somebody's background and everything, but then it's supposed to be a neutral recommendation, like a neutral party's recommendation for a sentence. And they recommended 18 months for MRT, and it was a huge downward variance. They were on board with the $530,000 value, but I haven't seen the report, obviously, because it's sealed, but from what they've referenced in the public court documents, and Fisher talked about this yesterday, just not that the probation officer didn't see a big difference between the culpability of MRT and the culpability of the 84-year-old dean that was involved in the bribe. And then also didn't quite see a connection between benefits for Sebastian Ridley-Thomas, the son who was going to get the USC scholarship and the job, in exchange for MRT kind of dangling this contract amendment in front of the dean, kind of saying, hey, I'll support this if you give my son benefits. The probation officer said that he didn't see a clear link between that. And those are the charges that the jury actually acquitted on. But I thought it was significant that Fisher yesterday brought up the fact that she can consider acquitted conduct at sentencing. She said she wasn't going to in this case, but she did make a point of saying that basically she thought that was proven. I mean, she didn't say the jury got it wrong. She would never just say that. And she said it was proven with clear and convincing evidence, isn't quite the same standard as beyond a reasonable doubt. But she made it pretty clear that she thought that that was all something like that. She thought prosecutors were right about that. So to have her go down to the 42, like I said, when she was reading the sentence, you just didn't know until the last minute. But she made a point of saying she thought the probation officer got it wrong and that he wasn't at the trial. So she definitely didn't agree with his 18-month sentencing recommendation. And you'll see Brian said, not surprised in the least by that comment, but quite surprised she gave such a significant variance. Because see, that's the thing that people don't understand. Like, and I know reporters, when they're writing for mainstream outlets, they just want to get into the news, which is how much are prosecutors recommending? How much is the defense recommending? I mean, to even use the phrase U.S. sentencing guidelines or something, it just seems too processy. But then people just don't have a good understanding of what's going on here, and they don't realize that to ask for probation in something like this, I mean, it's kind of like Tory Lanez's case. It's just like unrealistic. It's just not going to happen. You're asking for a huge variance, and then people might see the 3.5 years that MRT got and be like, oh wow, she was so harsh with him. And it's like, no, actually she was lenient with him. She gave him a pretty big variance. And before 2005, as my story explains, she wouldn't have even been able to give any kind of variance. She would just have to work within the guideline structure and find an offense level and go by that. But there was a Supreme Court ruling in 2005 that gave federal judges discretion on these sentencing guidelines, said that the guidelines were advisory. So that's why she's allowed to do this big variance that she did by 36 months or so. So I mean, she, and as people who know her, like I laughed at Brian's comment. He said, well, he said, but quite surprised she gave such a significant variance with a sentence for an unrepentant defendant that was so much lower than the government wanted. It's a Labor Day miracle, even though we won't see it that way. Exactly. He won't see it that way. But then he said something else I thought was pretty funny. And I almost messaged him to be like, I have a huge following, right? You don't mind if I put this out there, but I mean, he's commenting publicly. So, but I shared a text. And yeah, this was my friend when she saw the 3.5. She's because or this person, I'm not going to name her, but she was like, man, I wouldn't be surprised if Fisher does a decade plus. And I'm like, I think that might be a little much for this, but people aren't aren't sure with Fisher. But then again, we have never actually covered a sentencing with her. We watched the entire trial and we kind of know her reputation. My friend who has done sentencings with her and knows her well always thought that she would only do 3 or 4 years, but you'll see Brian says here, I find her combination of intellect and casual sadism exceedingly amusing, except when I'm the defense attorney. Yeah, exactly. And I thought it was appropriate that she cited Judge Walter and just the way she did her sentencing and how she had a written ruling, the way she explained it, the way she was just reading her statement. She read it with a lot better than Judge Walter did. But I was like, oh, I hope Judge Fisher and Judge Walter are friends and like have this like mutual respect for each other, because like they seem similar in how they approach that sentencing. But just looking what Judge Walter did with the developer sentencing, David Lee, I think Judge Walter would have given Mark Ridley-Thomas more time. Maybe. I mean, the developer's case was a little more blatant because he was a private developer who was trying to get a hotel or a project built downtown, had gone through the process properly, and then ran into an appeal and needed the help of a councilman. And it was a councilman who was like steeped in this bribery scheme. Like he wouldn't help anyone unless they bribed him. So the councilman basically shook him down for cash, and the developer ended up paying him $500,000 in cash. And then there was, after he got a grand jury subpoena, he falsified business records. So it was a different case, but Walter gave that guy 6 years. The prosecutors were asking for 7, and he gave him 6, and that was a downward variance. And he talked about how he's a good guy, he has a good family, but I mean, the guy's like 58, he had no criminal record, he's a Bel Air millionaire. All his kids went to Harvard Westlake private school, which is like the top private school in LA. They're all at, they went to Cornell and all have like top jobs. One's daughter's actually an associate at Kirkland Ellis, which is like the highest grossing law firm in the country. But that guy is going to go to federal prison for 6 years for giving $500,000 in cash to a city councilman. And I just think if Walter was the judge on Mark Ridley-Thomas's sentencing, would he have given him that big of a variance? I mean, maybe because a huge difference, and I should emphasize this, a huge difference between Mark Ridley-Thomas and that developer is Mark Ridley-Thomas is a public servant, and he clearly has done a lot of good things for the community. I mean, he had a huge crowd of supporters there. He had all these letters. His attorney said that the most touching letter she thought was from a woman who, a constituent of Ridley-Thomas's, who was so used to having garbage like dumped in her the alley behind her house, and she'd been complaining about it forever. And then finally, when Ridley-Thomas got elected, it got fixed. But it was, I mean, it's cool to hear that, but it's also just like, okay, I don't think this is actually a mitigating factor for like a public corruption case. And Fisher even talked about how, I mean, in the way sometimes his achievements almost kind of show how egregious his conduct was. But as somebody who watched the whole trial and has been kind of taken aback by, frankly, the gaslighting that's been going on afterward, and to see other journalists or people who purport to be journalists just like refusing to understand why this is such a big deal. It was refreshing to sit there and hear the judge just tell it like it is. And she said, and I've got this in the story, that she said, in this job, judges see a lot of very good people who inexplicably do very bad things. Dr. Ridley-Thomas is one of them. And I didn't include this in the article because you just have to explain, why she's saying Monday. But she does sentencings on Mondays. And she said something yesterday that really struck me when she's just going through the different reasons that Ridley-Thomas had for asking for leniency, like, you know, his family's going to suffer because of this, financially he's in trouble, that kind of thing. And she talked about how so many defendants have it like so much worse than him, and that she sees it all the time. She sees parents who aren't going to be able to raise their kids. She sees families who are already in a very bad financial spot, who are dependent on the man breadwinner who's now going to prison. She even said, she said something like, it's very common. And then the quote was, it happens in this courtroom almost every Monday. And I'm like, oh man, that's so, I want to highlight that a little bit more. But then again, you have to put that in context and explain that that's her set sentencing day in Judge Fisher's courtroom. But that's the thing, like, so many people show up to sentencings like Mark Ridley-Thomas or something, and they have never been in court before. They don't realize how many other people come before this judge all the time and get sentenced. Like, and Mark Ridley-Thomas's statement, like, he read an allocution, and I mean, he didn't apologize, but he apologized for giving the impression, or if he ever gave the perception of being in a bad space. I mean, he kind of stood by that he doesn't think that what he did was illegal, but it was also like so mechanic the way he read it. And I've seen some sentencings where people are just beside themselves with like remorse, like crying and that kind of thing. It was just like kind of a different scene with him. But have I ever seen a sentencing where the judge actually gave more than the prosecution recommended? I would think it rarely, if ever, happens. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think I've seen one off the top of my head. It seems like something I've probably seen Judge Carter do and not realize it. I've seen Judge Carter in Orange County do so many sentencings because I used to just hang out in his courtroom all the time. But although he was usually, like, if anyone's going to be lenient with you, it was more likely to be Judge Carter. But I think it does happen. I think it's not that, I wouldn't say it's rare. Maybe we could say it's uncommon, but it also might not be, because I think it does happen on more occasions than we think. And I think there's a chance we could see Judge Walter do it in Jose Huizar's case. He kind of indicated that Jose Huizar is the city councilman who's definitely not Mark Ridley-Thomas. Like, Mark Ridley-Thomas had like 150 supporters there to yesterday to pack the courtroom and just like show support for him. And somebody commented to me, they're like, hey, how many people do you think Jose Huizar is going to have for him when he shows up? It's like, probably not very many. Like, Jose Huizar like was not as liked as Mark Ridley-Thomas, but he had much more of a blatant, years long bribery scheme that he was doing, like racketeering. I mean, like I said, you couldn't get any business done with him if you didn't bribe him. And there's been other people who've been pleaded guilty and gone before Walter for trial. And this David Lee developer who was sentenced was part of that. And Walter basically said at Lee's sentencing that he might do more for Huizar than right now. The actual recommendation for Jose Huizar isn't out from prosecutors, but they've said it's going to be between 9 and 13 years. So right now the sentencing is scheduled for, I think, December. So their papers will probably be out like late November, early December. And we'll see what exactly they request. But I definitely think there's a chance Walter's going to do more than 13 years. Like, I think he would have done more than 13 years on Mark Ridley-Thomas, because he found a mitigating factor for the developer of, being a good guy, not having any criminal, being well, like being an accomplished father and friend and everything, and only gave him a variance of a year. So to give MRT, what was it, like a 36-month variance or something? Yeah, in the end, like as Brian said, he got lucky, but people aren't going to realize it like that. But one thing that came up yesterday was and this was in the sentencing papers that came out on the 7th, but I was so busy with all that other case where that guy asked for probation, I think. I don't know. I can't remember. I cover so many cases, they all kind of fall through the cracks. But I was really busy with that one the other while back, and didn't cover the MRT sentencing papers when they came out. But when I was reading them Sunday, I saw this stuff in the prosecution's papers about this like other pay for play scheme that, when I'm reading, I'm like, why wasn't he charged with this stuff? I don't know. And the reason prosecutors are bringing it up now is because to argue against MRT's argument that this was just a one-time thing. You know, it's an aberrant behavior in his background, and they were saying, actually, no, this appears to be part of a pattern. And they had let me pull it up here. They had emails showing some between him and a lobbyist for short-term rentals, proposing some amendment or some contract or something when he was on a resolution, when he was on the county commission. And after he does this business with the developer, all of a sudden his son Sebastian is meeting with the developer and the CEO, or not the developer, a lobbyist. The lobbyist and Sebastian are meeting with the CEO of a company to get donations for Sebastian's nonprofit. I was just like, what? And I mean, somebody, my friend who's following this case too, was like, shares my enthusiasm for this stuff. Was like, OMFG, you know, this is serious. How did he not get charged with this stuff? Here, let me pull it up. Let me pull up what the prosecutors are saying on this. Involved a county contract regarding short-term rentals to which Ridley-Thomas proposed an amendment that exactly matched an amendment sought by a lobbyist who contacted him. Yeah, the lobbyist sends him the wording for this amendment. He copies and pastes it over to the county people, doesn't tell him it's from a lobbyist, just kind of takes credit for it. And then he also emails the lobbyist a report about short-term rentals sent to him by another county official. I should take the S off that. And wrote, "You make me work too hard. Mercy. Do not share this with anyone." It's like, oh, come on. And I think everyone just sees this and they're like, oh, well, I see it. And I'm like, this kind of just looks like kind of blatant, like pay for play. Because it's not just that right there, but it's the oh, so damn. Let me fix that right now. But it's the meeting between Sebastian and the lobbyist that happens right after that. And then Sebastian sends MRT a list of, and they have them redacted, the names of the companies, but it's like a list of company names with dollar amounts next to them, and it's all companies that have business before the county. So it's like a wish list or something that he's putting together for MRT about possible funding for this nonprofit he was putting together. And I don't know, I was kind of amazed that other journalists, somebody else completely at the press conference mischaracterized what the judge said about this. The judge said she thought it was concerning, but it wasn't going to be anything that she considered in trial. And just like the shock from MRT supporters about this, that this is like coming up and they don't think it's a big deal. I'm like, this little wish list that the son has of like dollar amounts that he thinks that he can get from companies that have business before the county. I'm like, are people okay with this? I don't know. Maybe, you know, it's just, that's just how it is. And, you know, I'm just overreacting or something, but I'm like, I kind of see prosecutors' point on this. And frankly, like I said, my friend and I were wondering like, why did we never hear about this in trial? And why was this never brought up? And I'm wondering, because I always, when I was sitting there watching the trial, I was always like, they must have like so much more stuff on him than they're saying. And yeah, that kind of indicates that it was. And there was one moment in trial where they argued, where prosecutors tried to say that this opened the door for something. And Fisher just said that it didn't. And I'm like, I wonder if there was always kind of a hope that they would be able to get that in, and they just never did. But like I said, there was a reporter in the press conference who completely mischaracterized Fisher's comments on those emails. She just said that she found it concerning, but she wasn't going to consider it at sentencing. So, and the reporter's like, oh, she said that it didn't have anything to do with anything. It's like, no, actually, that's not what she said at all. And like I said, as a journalist, it's just kind of concerning that people see this and they aren't a little more like taken aback by it. I mean, look at this. And maybe, I don't know, constituencies. And they make the point that these are all people that, you know, his dad was doing business with. And like I said, I've talked before about how my aunt ran started a nonprofit in Corvallis, Oregon, kind of started it from scratch and built it into this big thing. And she named it Old Mill Center after the logging mill that my grandpa owned in Philomath, Oregon, before he died. Like I didn't know him. He died before I was born, but he was mayor of Philomath, Oregon, and owned a lot of property in Philomath. And after he died, my aunt got her PhD at Oregon State University, and she started a preschool for kids with developmental disabilities and typically developing kids. And like her PhD was all about integrated preschools and how we shouldn't separate kids with disabilities from typically developing kids. But it developed into this huge nonprofit. And like I said in a previous live, that I've known what United Way is since I was a little kid, because it's what funded Bev's preschool. I always knew that Old Mill got a lot of money from United Way, and she would hold an annual auction every year that is still the big fundraiser for Old Mill Center in Corvallis to this day. And the most money that it raises every year is like $250,000 or something. So, I mean, when I see this, I mean, this nonprofit wasn't even existing. And I'm not doubting that he had like good plans for it, and it was going to be a good, policy making effort. But to just be able to fund a nonprofit like this, I'm like, wow, so many people would love to be able to do that. Just have a wish list of companies you can just go to hit up for money to fund your nonprofit. I mean, imagine if my aunt did that with my grandpa's business in Philomath, Oregon. That's not how it worked. But I got the neighbors got something going on over there. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but anyway, we're not getting any really questions on the MRT thing, but kind of want to just turn that off. Got to close the window. But yeah, things are quieting down. Like I said, one thing about MRT, I'll always be surprised that he never tried to delay his sentencing. I mean, maybe they did once, or I think he got a delay on maybe the filing for the motion for new trial. But it just seems like he could have. Every criminal defendant is able to push their sentencing back, at least once or twice. But now he's got a report date of November 13th. It's like, gosh, to be in the processing mode in the federal prison system, like during the holiday season, it was just, I don't know. It seems like they could have tried to push it out and made a sentencing so that his report date was in early January. That would be a little more pleasant. But one thing I did here, it's always kind of hard to know how to cover these cases, because you want to do a big pre-write before so you can just send something out. But of course, so much stuff happens in the hearing that you want to include that. But with sentencing, with the memos, the memos kind of explain it all. So what I did was put together a pretty complete story the night before of all the sentencing facts. I should freaking close the window here. Here. Boom. Close that window on you guys. But yeah, I just went through the sentencing papers and summed up the arguments and subheads below there, because in the end, the oral argument that you hear is all just drawing from that. So put it together pretty well. But there's always a risk that something is now a little bit out of date or something in the story. Well, obviously, because it's all been decided. That's the guy we just heard from him. He's been busy. It's Don Alway. He was the FBI guy who talked at that kind of nothing of a press conference that I got tricked into streaming. He spoke afterward, after the MRT sentencing. But yeah, if anybody's super interested in all the details of this white collar crime stuff, honestly, the MRT case is one of my favorite cases that I've covered, because I love white collar crime. And it was make sure to put your chat on subscribers. Oh, is that subscribers only? Yeah, I mean, I was kind of realizing that there's so much about this YouTube thing that I don't know. Like YouTube's like a pretty advanced operation just in terms of everything you can do, like all the bells and whistles you can put on your videos, like links come up like as you're talking, like it'd be great. I need to get a little more organized on that. And I know that the chat only for or the chat for subscribers only is good when you are pretty active and you're getting trolled by Tory Lanez fans or something, but that actually hasn't really been happening today. Like, thankfully, they're not really around. But, and if I'm going to talk about this, I should probably advertise the chat. But one thing about the Tory Lanez thing that is coming up and that I'm cringing over is everybody always rewrites my tweets. Like all these news sites, like I tweet about one thing and they like write a whole story about this one tweet, but they get shit wrong. They're all these, and BET did it. I saw the headline in my inbox today because I mean, how else am I going to do it but just keep a Google alert for my name? So I get these emails with these blogs that share all my stuff, and I just go through and I cringe because I'm like, okay, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. And the big thing with this bias stuff that everybody is writing up is people are confusing a motion for bail with an appeal. So like the BET write-up and some like Hip Hop DX or something, the ones that I've seen just briefly, they say, somebody says who rewrote the tweet. I was thinking about bringing up the, let me see if I can bring up the email, because it's all these hip hop blogs that, and I shouldn't call them blogs because I think people use that term like, oh, blogger, just to be like dismissive and just demeaning of people and to act like it's like not a real website or something. But they're like legitimate news websites in the hip hop industry. But I mean, if you just look at the stuff they cover, like they are keeping up on like what Nicki Minaj is doing and like who Nicki Minaj is fighting with. And if like somebody unfollows somebody on Instagram, it becomes like a headline or something. So when I tweet stuff about the Tory Lanez case, I've like, it started during the trial, but people will fashion like entire articles off like, you know, and they'll have me in the headline. They're like, you know, Meghann Cuniff tweets something. And so this whole thing with Jose Baez, they're like, you know, Jose Baez claps back against Meghann Cuniff. And it was when I tweeted on Friday that he was in Italy, so it doesn't look like, you know, it doesn't look like the motion for bail is a priority because he's in Italy. That has turned into like the people who are rewriting it as, you know, Meghann Cuniff said that Jose Baez isn't taking his appeal seriously because he's in Italy, and I just cringe because I'm like, no, I'd like to think that people just actually go to read what I actually wrote, because I even say that the appeal is not something that you're going to expect to see for like a few months. And the way the appellate process works, like I would fully expect there to be like a opening brief, and then in the months after that, before it's decided, somebody's going to go on vacation. Like to criticize an attorney for going on a vacation like during an appellate process is not like, and I just cringe because I didn't do that. And when the headlines write it up, it just gives fodder to Baez, because I will say that if I were to write that he's not taking the appeal seriously because he's in Italy, that's a dumb thing to write. Because like I said, the appellate process just takes like months and months and months. It's the motion for bail is a completely different thing. That's almost like that's like a daily litigation thing. That's not really part of the appellate process. That's something that you would file within a couple of days of this happening, and you would be before Judge Hereford again for hearing within a couple of days. So the idea that you would like go to Italy if you were planning to do that, you know, that's not it. But it's like I said, it is different than the appellate process. So by these blogs and like BET writing about how, oh, Meghann said that, you know, the appellate process isn't being taken serious. I did not say that. I didn't say that. Let me pull up my guy. I don't know if I should really just like share my email inbox with everybody, but I gotta find a way to just like share a little post from it. But it's quieted down, thankfully, with this MRT stuff. I gotta get the sentencing transcript for Lanes and do a final story, and probably a live, but that's going to be over soon because like I said, I don't think he's actually going to file a motion for bail. And then right now I'm trying to think of like other trials that are coming up or anything that I'm going to cover, and it's the Girardi stuff. The Eastman stuff starts again on the 5th, But I'm kind of thinking, I'm like, I should freaking just get out of here and go up to Yosemite or something. I might do it. But oh, it's the hip hop DX. And I don't want to pick on them, but because like I said, they've got their own place in the world. But this is what happens when you just rewrite other people's shit and you get it wrong and you don't really know what you're talking about. It says Tory Lanez's lawyer hits back at claims he's slacking on rapper's appeal amid vacation. It's again, I'm not saying he's slacking on the appeal. Saying that a lawyer is slacking on an appeal because he's on vacation is a dumb thing to say. Like if he had oral arguments scheduled for Monday or something and he was on vacation, although I still wouldn't be able to say that. Like it's just not. It just frustrates me to see that. But I also just don't feel like it's not my job to patrol all those blogs and like be like emailing the people saying you got it wrong, you got this out, you need to change this. But gosh, if any of them are looking, and I don't want to do it today because I just don't feel like dealing with all the drama on there it'll cause. But when I do another Lane's thing on the sentencing stuff or something, I might have to tweet something about how like, hey, all the people who are rewriting it badly, like please don't do that. But yeah, somebody just said it's not like it's not my problem to freaking fix this stuff. And I'm not, and in the end, the reporter who does this is under a lot of pressure to just like rewrite like tons of stories a day, and it's overall pretty good. Like I do think that most of these people do strive to like be fair in how they present everything. And her thinking that the bail process and think that she can call it an appeal is it's just confusion, and she just doesn't understand the court system very well. But it's it's just this whole sentence right there. And in her mind, it's like, oh, well, a motion for bail and appeal motion. It's like, dude, it's not the same thing. Like, that's not what I said. You're the whole fucking bomb. I see this. It's frustrating, but yeah, it's and in the end, all this stuff is just for clicks only. Like I didn't really, I will admit that I didn't even know what the Shade Room was until the Tory Lanez trial, and I can't believe it has 28 million followers on Instagram. But yeah, I mean, this stuff is just click tea stuff that they all get out there. And yeah, somebody says take a break. I know I should. I need to go up to Yosemite. I think I'm going to soon. It's just kind of a matter of planning it all out. It's either that or it'd be better to drive up to Vegas. Vegas isn't my scene, but it's a good pit stop, and go over to Utah and go to like Zion, and then drive up to maybe do a pit stop in Salt Lake, and then drive up to Jackson Hole, stay in Jackson Hole for a night, and then drive up through Yellowstone, stay in like Gardner. And then I've got friends, old reporter friend. Actually, I should do a live with her up there. That'd be awesome. But she was the cops reporter at the Idaho Spokesman Review when I started. But Taryn lives in Prairie, Montana with her husband, Justin. For a while, he was the last great newspaper man in Montana. He was the editor of the Livingston Enterprise, but he just left that job recently. I'm not sure what they're doing, but they still live up there. I could totally go up there and go all around Yellowstone with them and stuff. It'd be awesome. But I can't take too much time off like that because I want to see the Girardi stuff. But definitely before the winter hits up there, I want to carve out some time to go up there. Somebody asked what the role of Sebastian was during the trial and sentencing. Did he show up? No, he was not at the trial, and I don't think it was at the sentencing either, because I saw somebody who looked like him, but that was his brother Sinclair. And that was another thing. I was like, it's so important for people to like see and hear these people in action. But I posted a video of Sebastian talking today, and it gets, I mean, of course this stuff gets no clicks because I mean they're not famous, nobody knows who they are. But let me pull up Sebastian's press conference, because I'm like, it's just so mechanical. Because like I said, I mean, Fisher's comment about how it happens in this courtroom almost every Monday, I was like, thought that was so poignant. But I mean, she's seen people like blubbering and being very just upset beside themselves when they're being sentenced. And then this is MRT's son after.
My name is Claire Ridley-Thomas, and on behalf of the Ridley-Thomas family, we are deeply disappointed in the current state of affairs related to the proceedings in Mark Ridley-Thomas' trial. We know Mark is a kind and loving husband.
I mean, and I don't want to cut him off because the stuff, I mean, they're talking about what a good guy is, but that first part is just like, what, dude? Like, we are deeply upset about the current state of proceedings. And you mean that 42-month prison sentence your dad just got? I mean, it's just weird. Like, I don't know. And then Cornel West, I didn't know who he was when he spoke, but the Green Party presidential candidate is friend, or presidential nominee candidate is friends with MRT in spoke. So somebody says, I envy you. The shade room is a plague. Yeah, I can kind of agree with that. My friend who I talk about all this stuff with, we were once talking, and she was just like, I fucking hate this shade room. Like, all that stuff is just awful. And I mean, just the people who troll me on, they found my Instagram now. I've got to all block them on there, but it's so vulgar and stuff. I mean, what the hell? Like, I'm going to sound like some prude or something, but it's like, oh yeah, some prude, because you weren't just talking about like all this crazy stuff that they talk about. But during the, and I like to tell people when I'm talking about all the attention I got tweeting the Tory Lanez trial, is that I would be like a little taken aback to look at my mentions and see like actual porn stars like retweeting me and stuff. I would like click on their page and be like, oh shit, this is like X-rated. And it's like, oh, well, they just want their Tory and Meg news, you know. But it's just a different, you know, kind of culture clash than some of the professionalism and the legal community stuff I'm used to. But I want to find a way to mesh it, because I definitely need to back off a little bit on the, you know, law nerd, federal court, all the time stuff, and do more of the celebrity cases. Like, one thing that I probably should have jumped on right away, but I could still cover, is that Michael Jackson sexual abuse lawsuit against his estate. There was an appellate ruling on that rekindles it, and it's going back to the trial court. That is a totally legitimate lawsuit. Like, sometimes you see those lawsuits, like the Lizzo lawsuit, and they're totally just publicity boons. But that's a real case. Like, when you look at the attorneys on it and just the legal stuff behind it, I could have done something like that. But Ebony, oh, one of my favorites. She says, try not to let the blogs trick you out of your professionalism, or get your classy clap back game together. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I really just need to ignore them, because I mean, in the end, it's like, that was a freaking tweet, one tweet about Jose Baez. It's not like I ever wrote an article about it or anything like that. But then all those blogs take it and turn around and write articles about it. It's just like, oh well, just ignore it. It's not me, you know. Yeah, the Michael Jackson coverage, I'll keep up with that. And ASAP Rocky, when that happens. Yeah, we talked about that last time. It's now like November 8th, but I wouldn't be surprised if that gets delayed again. The big thing, the big thing I need to get on is Danny Masterson's sentencing. I'm actually going to be talking to my friend Jessica, I think on Thursday, House and Habit. Check her out on Substack and Instagram. But we're going to talk about the Masterson case and do like a recorded interview. And I mean, the reason I haven't written anything on that recently is because there just hasn't been anything going on with it, other than they had the request for the unconvicted, the victims he wasn't convicted of raping are going to be able to give victim impact statements. So there was a quick hearing on that. But the sentencing memorandums haven't been filed. And I don't think he's filed a motion for a new trial. I should email his lawyer today, but the sentencing is set for the 7th, and I think his papers are due on the 5th. So I might do, if the papers are filed on the 5th, I might do a story then. And the 7th, I'm definitely going to cover the sentencing on the 7th. So that'll be a good one. But other than that, I think things are quite kind of quieting down. Yeah, they're desperate for material, and you give them quality, journalistically responsible material for free. Yeah, no, and that's the thing, and that's another thing. I'm like, I need to. I've got Yahoo does it all the time too. Anything I write, like any series of tweets I write, Yahoo will like take it and turn it into its own article. I'm like, I can't believe somebody just gets paid to like rewrite my tweets and stuff. But definitely my newsletter, I got to start locking down those articles, the written articles. I mean, I kind of just do need to move to you either pay for that website and you read them, or if you don't pay, you can't read the articles, because I can do these chats for free and everything. But somebody says there's something in the Lanes case scheduled for September 5th. I'm like, oh, is that his motion for bail? I'm like, I could see them, and especially now, I could see them filing one just to spite me or something. But yeah, like I said, it didn't seem to be a priority, but maybe Barhoma's filing it or something. But that, I will just say, that is kind of, if he actually does file one, that's such a waste of time. He's not going to get bail. But you know, anything they can do, I'll keep covering it. But anyway, I'll go check all that stuff out. But thanks for tuning in, everybody. See everybody later. See ya.